This episode of the House of Mystery is brought to you by Legacy Food Storage. The best way to protect your family is by being prepared. LegacyFoodStorage.com.
Fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery with your hosts, Eric Shapiro, David North Martino, John Copenhaver, and Al Warren. Heard on 106.5 FM Los Angeles,
102.3 FM Riverside,
and 105.0 AM Palm Springs.
You are back in the House of Mystery, and I'm Al Warren, and the guy drinking scotch and all that's David Martino.
Cheers!
Yeah, you started doing Christmas early, didn't you?
Yes, that's right.
You know, we were recording yesterday and the day before. He's been drinking since the Monday show.
I'm raiding the Scotch cellar in the House of Mystery.
Yeah, and he hasn't left. We can't get him out of there. Him and his cat. You know,
my cat's drinking more than I am.
Well, because he's in there with you.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's right. He can't get
Driving
out.
him to drink.
Yeah. You drive everybody too. Okay. Now today, let's see. We've got a completely different than yesterday's interview. Hey, that was totally not a policeman named Coffin. We have got a writer, and we're talking about a person that writes in the more of a I guess, I mean, we'll talk about this, but more of I think a suspense romance maybe, or something like that. So let's welcome Anne Russo to the show. How are you doing, Anne?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So Anne, how do you classify your writing? Like, what kind of writing would you call it if someone asked?
It's a romantic suspense thriller. It's usually the genre that I would call it. It kind of straddles quite a few different genres, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, it's a few, but definitely a romantic suspense.
Okay. I wonder, so when did you actually start writing? Let's go there. Like, what made you decide that you wanted to be a writer? Well,
I've been writing all my life. Since I was a little kid. I would say 7, 8 years old. I've always been an avid reader, and writing sort of always went hand in hand with that. But in terms of writing on professionally, that took me quite some time to get to that place. One of those writers that's kind of very self-conscious, full of lots of self-doubt. So even though this was something that I've loved to do my whole life, it took me a long time to get to a place where I felt comfortable sharing that work with others. So,
yeah, that's a really hard thing to do. I mean, everybody feels it, so you're not alone there. Some talk very confident, or they seem very confident. I know I do, but I'm just an awful writer, and I put out books and people buy them, and I don't know. I guess I just sort of think that it's a natural feeling to doubt whether or not you're good enough. But I'm sure you are. It's just you just keep on going. What have you learned now? It looks like you've done 2 books so far. After doing these 2 books and having them out in the population, so to speak, and you look back at it, do you think you've become a better writer, or do you think you've learned something?
Oh, absolutely. Just between the first book and the second, I mean, there's definitely times I actually want to go back and rewrite the first one, knowing what I know now. It's constantly a learning process. Kind of in the middle right now, working on book 3, and, just what I know now, I wish I had known in the beginning, but it's like anything. It's a learning process.
Yeah, no, and don't ever go back. The thing is, I do that all the time, and then I go, oh my God, that's a terrible book. Oh my God, I need to redo this and stuff like that. But you get yourself into a worse mess when you try to update or redo a book, I think. It's just not, just let it go. Take it as it is. Now, these 2 books, this is book 1 and book 2 that you've done here, and The Dead Don't Lie and The Dead Don't Mourn. What made you decide to take the sequel route or series route in this type of book?
Well, the simplest answer is there was too much story for one book. The title, The Dead Generations, is a generational book, where I go into not just the story of these 2 characters, Ian and Adam, but also the story of their parents as well. When I originally started working on it, it started off as a book, realized there was so much story, so it became a trilogy. And then somewhere around plotting that, I realized there was even more story. So it just kind of, took on a sort of a mind of its own and just grew from there.
Well, but so are you the type of writer, are you sitting there and plotting it all out? Do you sort of have, a beginning, middle, and end in your mind, and then you sort of write in the details, or do you just kind of take it as it goes?
Well, I definitely outline plot. My anxiety simply wouldn't allow me to just wing it. That's for sure. So there's definitely a beginning, middle, and end to this series. I definitely know it's actually set up to be a 6-book series. So I know how each book ends, where it starts, the middle, and the ending of each book. But I do like to leave myself, a bit of wiggle room, just to, as these ideas are coming to me, I can sort of fill in the blanks with them.
So in the Dead Don't Lie, when we look at that, you're talking about your Dr. Adam Morrow. Who is your character, Adam Morrow?
Okay, well, Adam begins the book. He's a heart surgeon. His life is pretty much written for him. He feels like this is the path that he's kind of stuck on as a person. He's a very goal-minded, very serious individual, and he sort of has his whole life just taken from him in one night. So he goes from being a person who's, devoted his life to helping others to someone who suddenly has to be kind of comfortable in this morally gray world of, assassins. So it's kind of watching him, go from being morally good to more morally gray, I guess. That
sounds like Dave. He's more morally black, I think. I don't know what that's,
We haven't gotten to the morally black characters yet, but there are quite a few of those as well. No redeeming qualities whatsoever.
Well, when you write your characters, do you have an inner monologue in your head? Can you hear your characters, or is it more visual for you when you're writing?
It's a bit of both. For me, each scene sort of starts with like a snapshot. I'll just see like an image, and then I start building out from there. And as for, hearing the characters, yeah, absolutely. Both Ian and Adam have very distinctive voices. That's kind of how I know when I'm getting it right, is when I can literally hear them speaking those words, which is really interesting, especially as we go along. I mean, I've been working on this book now the series for about 2.5 years now. So their voices have definitely gotten more distinctive with each book. That's for sure.
See, I'm not the only one who hears voices, Al.
Well, yeah, but you...
I know, I didn't want to miss him.
Yeah, well, there's a little difference here, really. There is. He's a little out of control down there. Now, I wonder now, but these two main characters you've got in this, Ian and Adam, now they end up becoming close and romantically involved somewhat, I guess.
Yes.
How did you decide to go that way?
Well, I definitely, I'm gay myself, so I wanted my characters to be LGBT from the start. That was a given. So that sort of just grew from there.
The good thing is they're not typical gay characters.
No, and I definitely didn't want the story to be, the main conflict of the story to be about them being gay. So many of the books that I've read, that's the central conflict of most of these books, is the family doesn't agree with it, them being homosexual or something along those lines. In this story, their sexuality has little, if nothing, to do with the angst that they experience, the conflict, which I thought was really important to me, that not be the central focus of the story.
Right.
It's more than that. These characters, I just simply wanted gay characters to be able to exist, and the story to stand on its own, whether or not this was, a love story between a man and a woman or two women. When you just look at the actual series itself, it doesn't really hinge on the fact that these are two men who have, become romantically involved.
Right. So it's more like you're creating a story and develop the story, and there's a lot more going on with each character than just their sexuality. It's kind of what you're saying. Right.
Absolutely.
Which is very important. It's almost like we've got a couple of characters that are doing things, and the story's going along, and it just happens that that's their sexuality. So it's not like the key part or the pivotal part of the show or the book.
Right. Exactly.
You say you hear your voices in the head of these characters, which is like Dave. I wonder now, how do you come up with your character then? Like, they didn't just start talking to you in the middle of the night one night and said, "Oh, hey, write about me." It comes from somewhere, and where do you think that is?
That's really difficult to say. I originally started this idea because, I just wanted to write something that I wanted to read. What I wanted to read didn't exist. I believe there's it's a Toni Morrison quote, if there's something that you want to read, it's not been written, you need to write it yourself.
Right.
That's where I went with it. I've always loved action movies, thrillers, but very few of them have LGBT heroes. You never see a gay action hero. And I thought that would be really interesting. So that's sort of where I built Ian's character from. He's all the things you would think of, in terms of action movie style heroes. But he's gay. And that's not the central focus of who he is as a person, but it's just, happens to be who he is. And I just thought that would be really neat to do.
Oh, yeah.
That sort of wanting that character is where everything else came from.
Yeah, how do you feel like that the LGBTQ people are kind of displayed in movies and TV and books like that? Are you feeling that there's a lot of, I don't know, what's that word, trope? It's a lot of kind of, I don't know, generic characters that they'll just throw in because they're gay. So, well, here's the gay person, and they have the same attributes or something. And do you feel like that's kind of why you would write this kind of book?
Absolutely. When I came out back in, risk of dating myself, as a teenager in the late 90s, I remember at that time just looking for media that I felt represented me. And, what I was finding is that, LGBT people were either, the butt of jokes, the side character. They never were actually given any agency in their own stories. And they certainly, gay men weren't allowed to be tough, to be masculine. They were always, like I said, sort of like a joke, a punchline. And I really wanted to to do something different than that, something that when I was a teenager, if I had found, it would have really resonated with me.
Yeah, it's a tough sort of place. Do you pick up things like from other people? Like, do you find that you go out and you watch people and observe them and stuff? Like if you're at a coffee shop or you're in a shopping store or something, and you see people doing or saying certain things, you overhear things. Do you kind of pick that up and maybe insert it in some of your characters? Do you think?
I don't think so much, just random strangers, but there's definitely people that have come and gone in my life that I see bits and pieces of in my writing. When I'm actually writing it, I don't notice it. It's only later when I go back that I see that I've taken personality traits from this person, that person. In terms of, getting inspiration from, people on the street, I think sure. I think a lot of my inspiration, I'm not even entirely sure where it comes from. I've been inspired by so many different things over the course of my life. I'm an avid reader, big film buff. So it's really difficult for me to see all of the inspiration that I've drawn from over the years, but I sort of just give myself permission to use elements of things that I've enjoyed in the past. And that's definitely, goes into observing the world around me, just being a very curious and observant person. And I'm sure that, lends itself to my writing, whether or not I realize it or not. Absolutely.
Well, I know you plot out these books to a certain extent, but I was just wondering, have you ever had a character do anything that surprised you, that they've maybe done a complete 360 and maybe done something very unexpected in the course of your writing?
Yes, definitely. And I would love to talk more about that, but, so much of my book is, if we talk too much about that, I risk spoiling things for people. So much of my book hinges on, cliffhangers and plot twists, and I really would not want to spoil things for people, but there are definitely things that the characters have done and said that kind of even took me by surprise and kind of just ran with it, and I wouldn't say changed the entire course of the series, but definitely lent it to a different path. That's for sure. I'm
just trying to figure out which character you made after me, Ian or Adam. Which one's the better looking one? Because you see, I can, karate. You'd have to do that's Dave. Dave's the karate guy, right? So, but assassin, that sounds good. Dark, mysterious. I'm the assassin.
Warren assassin.
Yeah, no, I guess not. Well, it's kind of interesting, but do you want people to get something out of the book besides the story itself, like the thrill and the excitement and the entertainment? Is there kind of an underlying theme or subtext, do you think, in the book?
Not necessarily. I really did just want to write something that people found entertaining. Something that kept them on the edge of their seat, turning the pages. That was definitely my goal. But if, certain aspects of the book resonate with people, that's great too. There's a lot of dark psychological aspects of it, focused on Ian's essentially being groomed to be an assassin from childhood. So I did a lot of research into that. He's sort of under the thumb of his stepmother, Catherine, who was, pretty much resigned him to this life. So I did a lot of research into grooming behavior, toxic narcissism, things like that. And I feel like that part of it will definitely resonate with some people who have experienced that themselves. There's a lot about trauma, childhood trauma. And I think besides just being, a really entertaining, exciting book, there's a little bit more depth to it that way.
No, I was just going to ask how you get into the mind of an assassin character.
Well, starting from that building him from the ground up, what made him this person. So, exploring his childhood and how that influenced the man that he became. So, it wasn't so much getting into the mind of the killer. It was more how this killer could be okay with this sort of life, how he can be groomed and convinced that this is acceptable, this is his life, and not question it. And so that was definitely interesting for me.
I think that when we write these things, sometimes we have to get right into a character. Is there kind of, how do you do research for something like that? Unless you're an assassin, maybe you're an assassin. We don't know this. This is a perfect cover too. You'd be an author and yet you're going around killing people. But do you actually find other people that were famous assassins or people that were known as that kind of a person, and you kind of research them, or do you just sort of it's interesting to see what kind of research goes into that?
No, not necessarily. I didn't draw him from anyone in particular. No. But there was a lot of research involved, just in terms of firearms, things like that. It's very action based. Watched a lot of videos on varying fighting styles, things like that. So, I sort of just built it from there. But I really didn't want any particular person to influence the creation of his character. I kind of just let him speak for himself and went from there.
What's your writing style? Are you able to sit down and so there's nobody in the house or nobody around, nobody to bother you, let's say from 11 to 3, can you just sit down and go, okay, I'm going to write now and do it? Or is there a certain mindset you have to have?
Definitely a certain mindset. I do try to write every single day, whether that's a page or that's 5 pages. I definitely try to write something. But definitely it helps being in that mindset. And I don't write each book from start to finish. I kind of write out a sequence. So, a certain scene will be speaking to me more than another or more vivid, and then I'll sort of go from there. Whatever is talking to me that day, whatever character wants to speak, that's usually where I'll go.
Do you have a kind of a favorite author or a couple of authors that you really like, that you read?
It's actually interesting that you mentioned that, because I had actually just done a blog interview where I was asked a similar question, and I had mentioned Anne Rice, and not sure if you're aware, she just recently passed. Right. But that got me thinking again of just how inspirational of a writer she was to me as a young person. I've always strived to that level of world building, and just the vividness of her writing is something I've always inspired me. But I read so many different authors. I'm equally inspired by both fiction and nonfiction. I read a lot of nonfiction as well, biographies especially, and I think I tend to draw a lot of inspiration from past historical figures, things. That's definitely always been a huge source of inspiration for me. I find people fascinating. I do.
Yeah. Well, so you like my books then? So I'm an inspiration. No. Oh no.
No. I mean, I true crime is actually another subject that I find fascinating as well. Obviously, writing assassins and all.
Yeah.
A bit of interesting crime myself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's kind of it's kind of an interesting mix. I think it's great. I think it's a good mix and stuff. I like that style. So where do you see yourself going? Like, how do you like being in publishing right now? How do you like the way it's going for you?
So far so good. It's sort of been a bit of a whirlwind, actually, to be honest. It just happened very, very quickly for me. And I'm still trying to, even believe this has happened. It just, like I said, I only started actually plotting the series and writing it about 2.5 years ago. Just published the very first one in March. So it happened, very fast. And I don't think I've really had a chance to, really plan out where I want to go with my career. because I didn't even essentially even consider the fact that I might have one. But really, I just want to, continue telling good stories, stories that resonate with people, that they find exciting and interesting. That's really what I want more than anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I can do it, anybody can. So just think of that, well, that's pretty cool. So do you like the social media aspect of it? Do you like, all this online where people can just review or talk to you, or people can just, send you messages and stuff like that? Are you really active with that whole online world, or do you sort of stay away from it?
I try to be active with it. It's a bit out of my comfort zone. I'm kind of shy, introverted by nature. So it's difficult for me to put myself out there like that. Trying to get more comfortable. But I also recognize it's essential. In this day and age, you do need to have a social media presence in order to get people's interest. So it's within the last year or so, I've been trying to get more and more comfortable with that, which has led me to doing things like this.
Just torture. Get the whip out, Dave. Put her on the rack. Well, the thing is, I think overall you just got to kind of ignore a lot of what you hear, a lot of the noise, and focus on your writing and don't let it affect you. Just keep moving forward. Right.
Absolutely.
Well, when you're done writing for the day, do you have any way to relax, recharge? Is there anything that you do to kind of decompress so that you'll be ready for the next day?
Well, it's funny. I never actually feel like I'm done for the day. These characters are just with me all the time. So it's hard for me to kind of shut them off in my head. There's always part of me that's thinking of something. But I do sometimes just, the end of the day, try to just sit back. I'm big on podcasts. Obviously I do a lot of reading. I just try to, distract myself. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But, since I started this series, I just sort of learned to live with them. And if they give me a break, wonderful. But often they don't. They're pretty relentless that way.
Well, you can be like Dave, take up drinking.
Yeah. There you go.
just drink a lot, Yeah.
Well, shut it all out that way.
Yeah, just why not? You don't know who's talking to you, right?
No.
It's all a blur.
Yeah.
Now, so it's pretty interesting that you put this all together and you just kind of, it sounds like it's a lot of work for you and stuff like that. So you don't really kind of get where it all comes from for you. I wonder what do you think influences your writing, or do you have any influences besides other writers and stuff like reading and that? Is there something that you sort of can absorb that you think gets into your writing? Maybe some of your hobbies or things that you do outside of writing?
Hobbies outside of writing, I don't even know what that is.
Oh, well, I thought maybe you were going to admit that you're an assassin here. So
we want the exclusive.
I'd be more confident of a person if I was.
Well, it's just such an interesting process. Okay, so now you're a fairly new writer and you finally made the jump and started putting books out. What would you tell someone that writes, that's kind of in your position, that hasn't had never decided to publish, but they write? Is there some advice that you would give them now, looking back, now that you've done it?
Keep going. Don't stop writing for anything. Even if you just write, a paragraph a day, or just don't give up on it. There were a lot of days that I was just, this is silly. Why am I devoting so much time and energy to this? So much self-doubt. But the only thing you can do is really just push through that and just, keep writing one sentence at a time. As long as you do something towards that goal every day, you'll eventually get there, and just believe in yourself. I wish I had told myself that much younger, much sooner in my life. But
Yeah.
everybody's process, everybody's, timetable is obviously different.
Right.
And I'm, happy
So-
to be here now.
Who are you going to who do you want to play your characters, like the roles of like Adam Morrow, besides me, of course.
Of course.
If you're on a Netflix or some movie or something, who would you choose?
Well, people have asked me that before, and I really can't say. And I'll be honest, I sort of dislike the idea of fan casting them, because I feel like the person who could best play them doesn't exist yet, or I've never heard of them. They're just very distinctive in my head. I feel like leaving that up to the reader's imagination is probably best.
Okay, they're all going to vote for me.
Yes, that's going to be Al.
Me and Tom Cruise.
That's a good pairing.
Oh. Oh, yeah, that's for the senior show. Yeah. No, it can't be like that. Well, so do you have a website, or how do you like people to contact you, when you're, talking with readers and stuff like that?
Well, I do have a website, Russo.com. I'm also have a bit of a presence on Twitter. That is Ian Russo Books. And I always welcome, emails, people reaching out to me to talk about the book. I still find that all still very exciting. So yeah, absolutely. Anybody who wants to, reach out or, learn more, those are probably the best places to do so.
Of course, and of course we're going to run that on our website as well, so people can find you with one click and do it easy. Hey, and now, was COVID, because you just have started putting these out this year, so was COVID kind of in the way, or do you think it influenced you during the writing process here?
Well, it's funny because I started this, like I said, summer of 2019. I was still working full time. And writing this on the side. But then around, the very beginning of the pandemic, early 2020, I lost my job. And there was so much uncertainty, everybody was terrified. And I sort of let myself just dive into this, probably as a distraction.
Right.
It worked. I was really able to focus on these characters, focus on the series. And, by, November of 2020, I had, gotten a publishing deal. I signed with my publisher, JMS Books. So it happened very quickly for me in that sense. But yeah, I think COVID definitely helped. COVID helped, but in terms of slowing down, the world slowing down, that sounded terrible, but so that, things slow down a bit and, everybody was locked inside. And, I kind of just used writing as a way of, coping with that. Definitely sped up the process. That's for sure.
Did you find you have to be kind of careful on how you write certain situations? Because I know that you've got a warning about the suicide attempt and stuff like that in the book, or substance abuse and stuff. When you do that, are you extremely careful? Because nowadays everyone's, I don't want to say hypersensitive or anything, but people definitely will let you know if they don't like something these days. So do you have to be mindful, I guess, is that the word, of what you write?
Well, absolutely. And, the funny thing is, the thing I should have mourned for more than anything was the cliffhangers. Oh, boy, do people not like cliffhangers? They do not. I felt like it definitely needed a warning for that more than anything, because I was very conscientious of the dark themes of the story. Some of it deals with sexual assault. There is the suicide aspects of it. So I was very aware that there are certain things that I needed to warn people about. But there's a lot of dark things in this book. And, if I sat there and I warned for every single thing, we wouldn't get anywhere. So, I think I try with the synopsis of the book itself to let people know what they're getting into going in. But there are certain, topics that I feel definitely deserve to have a warning for sure. I don't want to trigger anybody's trauma. That's definitely not what I wanted to do.
Right. That's why, and you kind of have to tread carefully sometimes, I guess. Maybe in the way we say things and stuff. I think that, but it's interesting. Do you actually, with one being a doctor, did you kind of study that a little bit? Like, do you get into how a doctor talks or acts or certain wording, or are you staying away from that whole medical aspect?
Yes and no. I mean, there are scenes where the doctor, part of Adam needs to be present, where he is taking care of other people. And I do have his demeanor, his approach to people that be quite different. There's a certain way he speaks that, he's more professional. So yeah, no, I definitely did some research into, he's a heart surgeon. So I looked into that a bit. There's scenes in the book where he has to remove a bullet. So I had to do research on that. So as it comes up, there's definitely, like all parts of the book, I've had to do lots of different research. That's just one part of it.
Well, they can just drink some whiskey and pull it out with his teeth.
There was a bottle of vodka involved.
Well, there you go. You see, yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. Vodka, whiskey, you just take a shot. And I've seen that on old classic westerns. They just tough men, John Wayne, that whole thing. It's crazy. Yeah.
It's step one of bullet removal.
Yeah. Do you worry about the cliffhanger bit? Because in a way that kind of makes the person have to read each book, right?
That's the goal.
Well, yeah, that's the goal. But I mean, in essence, because like if I am to pick up a book now, I kind of have to start with book one. Is that true? Yeah.
Oh.
So you don't think so, or will they stand on their own, or because with the cliffhanger, if I start reading book two, I'm kind of not really going to know what brought up the cliffhanger, right? Or what led to it.
Oh, I would definitely not recommend reading these out of sequence at all.
Right.
It's one continuous storyline. I think of each book more like seasons of a television, show. So there's that, big finale at the end and the wait and, what happens next. And that's sort of how I built each book with that in mind. But I wasn't aware of that people do not like cliffhangers. They don't.
Right.
I think it has a bit to do with, we're so used to being able to binge what we're watching, instant gratification, and having to wait, can be tedious. And, I think if I had to do it over again, I might not have done that. But now it's a little late in the game to change it. So we'll just roll with it.
Well, at the end, you can make it all a dream. He wakes up and it was all just a bad dream. That's all.
Right to the beginning.
Well, well, that's interesting. It sounds like a great series to people to get into and start reading. So we recommend it. People, pick up the books. Let's get going. You're going to fall behind. We've already got 2 books out. So the books, of course, we're talking about is The Dead Don't Lie and The Dead Don't Mourn. Our guest is the author of both books and more coming. Anne Russo, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Thanks, Anne.
Tired of wasting time trying to decide what to watch on your streaming service? Go to our website and look for the Martino movie reviews.
To find out more about our show, guests, or to listen to past shows from our archive, please go to www.houseofmysteryradio.com.
The mission has been completed.
The end! By George, he's got it! It is the end! I'll see you.
If you're lying to me, I'll be back.
This has been a production of Something Weird Media.